Good evening, everyone. How's it going out there? Welcome back here to a Monday night. It's definitely a Monday. Let me tell you, I can feel it. I've been feeling this Monday night. Let me tell you, I don't know if anyone else has been feeling a little odd negativity out here. Man, everything, today is like a day where you accidentally hang up your collar or maybe your sleeve on a door handle or maybe your pants on a doorstop or something like that. That is what happened today, nonstop to me. It's very annoying. I don't have many days like this. In fact, I do like to voice my emotions because, well, the last time I experienced something like this was back in 2011. I was having somewhat of an anxiety attack and I couldn't figure out why I was feeling like this. Just anxiety and having a negative day. Well, within about a couple days or so of my experience, we had that 2011 event, that 9.1 earthquake there in Japan happened. So I'm pointing this out here for the folks and the viewers here, just in case something major happens out here across the West Coast, okay? I know I have quite a few viewers out here, quite a few subscribers, and I just want to point out how I'm feeling. And today, if you watch my live stream earlier when I was doing the member update, you could see I was a little bit frazzled. Everything was happening negatively around me. So it's been one of those days. Whether it's just your typical Monday or this is just a Monday like you would not normally expect, well, I had one of those days. So it's been a Monday that I don't want to remember. Now, whether these experiences that I'm experiencing right now is related to something bigger coming, that's in the forecast, I guess. We'll see what happens here. All I know is that I can't put my finger on it. I can't shake the negative vibes out here, and it's been hitting me all day today. It's like when I was doing the live stream, there was a basketball that was like right in front of my way while I was walking. And I double-checked that area before we were doing the live stream. And sure enough, during the live stream, that came up, and I almost tripped over it. So, it's just when negativity is in the air, we need to be prepared. So right now, we do have a lot of earthquake activity potential to watch out here along the Hayward Fault in a lot of people call this Northern California. I don't want to stir up any nerves, but I would call this Central California, okay? The Bay Area. We got a number of earthquakes out here on the Hayward Fault. That's a little concerning to me and anyone else that lives out here in the Bay Area. This should be very concerning, okay? Earlier this morning, there was a 2.6 that popped up out of the blue. It was about 5 hours later where we see the little sequence of aftershock activity there in the very low 2 range, and then a more recent 3.0 earthquake earlier this evening. Looks like a 1.4 popped in there as well. But this is a very unusual amount of aftershock activity. Normally we'll see things stir up from a 4.3 in the 50 to 60 range in terms of aftershock sequences there. So it's a little odd. I'm going to turn down the mic here. I know I got a fan on in the background, so I am going to lower this just a little bit so I don't cut off the mic because I am a little bit excited about this event. I don't want to see anything big happen, but when it comes to earthquake activity along a major fault system, it does get my nerves rolling out here a little bit. So along this area of the Hayward Fault there, that's some interesting activity. This could very well be foreshock, F-O-R-E. Okay, I know I posted earlier in my social media accounts there the foreshock activity, and it's just, I tell you what, text to talk doesn't work. That's why I don't do text to talk here on the live stream or anything involving this video here. I want to show you guys here the well, where'd we go? Let's go back here. Just continuing. It's one of those days here. let me show you guys 4.3, and I have to do it manually again because I had this set up. I did. I know I did. Okay? We're going to do it again. There's a lot of negativity happening out here in the world right now. And man, is it happening out here along the West Coast. I'm experiencing it right now. So let's go here, cover the Bay Area, and the Hayward Fault, at least a good portion of it. This is 4.0 and above, or 4.3 and above, since the year 1000. You know, even my mouse is messing up. You know, when you got all this negativity, you have to know that something big is about ready to happen out here. And I really feel it. I really do feel it out here across the Bay Area. Somewhere out here along the West Coast, something big is brewing. So now the 4.3 earthquake that struck today is surprisingly not showing up on the USGS map. I did have a couple folks out there, viewers, asking me why I don't utilize the USGS map out here, historical model. I'm almost always utilizing this map here. So I did correct that person, and they apologized, and we kind of made amends, and I appreciate the comment out there. So you know who you are. I'm always looking at this map here in terms of USGS history. So the last 4.3 out here was not even around the Hayward Fault. Okay, I'm trying to figure this out. There was a 4.3 2019. One earthquake way out there. 2018, there was a little earthquake north here of Oakland, around Berkeley. That was 2018 to 4.4. Now, that was technically 7 years ago. Okay? 7 years ago. Previous to that, there was another well, that's the same one. There was a 6.0 Napa. I gotta watch this here. There's your 6.8 back in 1968, okay? We do have to worry about that date, okay? The reason why here, okay? Think about this for a minute, okay? 1868. Well, if you go 2025, subtract 1868, that brings up the year, or at least the years here, of 157 years since that big earthquake here. 1870, there was a 5.8. So 18, yeah, there's some aftershock activity from that big earthquake back then. I want to point out here the potential here for a big earthquake activity along the Hayward Fault. Okay, this is very serious here because it's not like this is a portion of northern Nevada where there's very limited population, or somewhere out in eastern Wyoming where there's nobody but a few families out there. But they're important still, right? Because every life is important. But the Bay Area consists of millions of people. This is a concrete jungle that I wouldn't live in. That's just my own personal choice. I don't want to live down there. I would never live next to that millions of people. But everyone's lives, kids, grandchildren, there's people, humans that live down there. And there is a potential for big earthquake activity along the Hayward Fault. And we have populated that area geologically in the last 157 years. Check this out. Look at this real quick, folks. I'm going to blow this up for you. You guys see that? 140 to 150 years is the average interval between large earthquakes there along the Hayward Fault. We are at 157 years. Numbers, okay? If you never paid attention to math, that's fine. You know, algebra and all that stuff, you know, calculus, we don't have to figure that in. There's no need to figure in calculus or anything else. I hate that. I'm very bad at that. But I tell you what, geology is about the study of time and stress. there's been 157 years of stress out here along the Hayward Fault. And when you think about this, when they figure out the average intervals, well, that puts us above the number of average years. So we are at a time here where even a train honking along the Hayward Fault may trigger the Hayward Fault. There is potential up to a 7.0 earthquake. The last event was a 6.8. That's a large event if you really think about it. But there is potential for a 7.0, and also there's a little bit of concern here. There's verified information here that the Hayward Fault is connected underneath the Bay Area here to the Rogers Creek Fault, extending the fault system here to the north. That would result in a larger fault rupture up to a 7.5 earthquake. We just got another earthquake coming in here to the Berkeley area with a 1.8. So things are starting to stir up out here, folks. This is not your typical aftershock activity out here. I mean, it's odd to see a 2.2 5 hours later from a 4.3 after 157 years of built-up strain, folks. We have to use a little common sense here. I know, I get it, right? This is social media. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone, I looked at all these comments here on my videos, and also if you go back to mainstream media on Facebook or Twitter or X, whatever you use, and look at the news media stations covering this 4.3, you would be, well, I don't think you'd be surprised, but everyone's stating, well, that's a 4.3 because I had Taco Bell last night, or I was working out in the gym. This is nothing. This is very common for California. Quit trying to fearmonger. Let's have a moment of silence there for that, because I am more concerned with the time that has passed out here, okay? Let's use common sense. There's so much time that has passed out here along the Hayward Fault, so much time that has passed along the San Andreas Fault as well. I talk about this a lot along the Cascadia. But the folks here, these little bitty ants here, let me show you guys where they live, okay? Look at this. When you zoom in here, this is a massive population of millions of people. And everyone's got an opinion out there in the Bay Area, wherever they live. And that's fine, right? This is human civilization. It's life. We deal with it every day, whether we go to wherever we work or to the coffee shop or social media, right? This is a little planet that we live on. We're nothing. We are very minimal ants here on the planet. But I tell you what, that's why I strictly focus on time when I cover my updates out here. And measly 70 years that we live here, maybe 80 if we're lucky, it's been 157 years of built-up strain along the Hayward Fault out there. This is something to not take for granted here, because the 6 point, what was that struck out there? The 1989 during the World Series. You guys remember that earthquake that struck out there? Was that 6.9 or 6.7? Yeah, that was a good earthquake, but that happened off here along the plate boundary, where all the collapses occurred. The freeway collapses. I was only a kid, and I watched that on TV, but I felt that. I did feel that earthquake up in Northern California here outside of Colusa, where I lived at the time. But a 6.8 or a 7.5 with its entirety out here, I think would do much more damage, because that earthquake that struck in 1989 was south here along the area, along the San Andreas Fault here, not directly underneath this area where the population density is occurring. So this is, man, it's a big concerning event out here. And I do think that the activity that we're seeing right now is foreshock activity. And I showed you guys here when we look back at historical earthquake activity here on the Hayward Fault. This is close range. There was a 4.4 earthquake there north of Berkeley. That was technically to the northern end, just off the Hayward Fault here, where the 4.4 struck. 1870 was a 5.8. So this area, no matter what you read on social media or on any other site, is a very dangerous fault system out here. There was a 6.8 there in 1898 around the Rogers Creek Fault, and that's towards this northern end here of this entirety of the fault system. And they found evidence here, credible evidence, that the Hayward Fault connects there to the Rogers Creek Fault. So this could result in a bigger earthquake activity. If you think about everything building up out here, the infrastructure, the population density, all this weight, if you really think about it, the weight out here has increased. So that could potentially increase the earthquake amplitude out here along the Hayward Fault up to the Rogers Creek Fault. It's a little concerning, folks. We're not living in a time where we should be joking about this stuff. In fact, there was a 1.0 earthquake, not a big earthquake, but just an earthquake there west here of the area of interest along the San Andreas Fault. But this activity is following events that happened here. We need to go back the last 30 days, I think. We had swarms out here around Vallejo, swarms south here along the Hayward Fault, the southern end, and inland as well. That's all indicative there of stress increasing into this area. The stress here is built up by, and this is just a very simple, about as crayon kindergarten image as you can get, okay? But this goes for its entirety there along the North American and the Pacific Plate boundary. These two are interacting and somewhat combining against one another. So it makes sense here to see inland areas increase in earthquake activity. And that's where we've seen some swarming activity here recently around the Bay Area. The swarming area around the Bay Area is concerning because of the amount of time that has passed for big earthquake activity. And let me tell you here real quick, folks, I see a lot of comments stating, well, it's better to see a 4.3 than a 7.0. Well, that's great. That is great and hunky-dory in terms of human perspective and kindness and, conversation. But technically, a 4.3 is nothing. It's not going to do any relief of stress for the strain that has built up out here in 157 years. Right? You imagine how many 4.3 earthquakes it would take to relieve a strain of a 7-pointer? Oh, man. Let me check that out real quick. Hold on. I need to bring this up, okay? I'm going to go on to Google search. How many 4.3 earthquakes would it take to relieve a strain of a 7.4 earthquake? There we go. Sorry, folks. Oh, my goodness. Do you guys really want to hear the numbers? Check it out yourself. You'll be shocked. You guys would be shocked at the amount of 4.3 earthquakes that it would take, okay? Holy moly. You guys ready? It would take approximately 29,000, not 2,900, not 29, but 29,000 magnitude 4.3 earthquakes to release the same amount of energy as a single 7.0 earthquake. 7.0 earthquake. Hello, please get your facts right, okay? This is not relieving strain whatsoever. And I've said this my entirety here out on the YouTube channel, and I put my name out here on the line. That increasing earthquake activity around the region is a sign of an increasing strain and pressure in the area, and I've been true to my word. Okay, watch the Bay Area. This 4.3 ain't doing diddly squat in terms of releasing strain out here. Northern California, one earthquake there early after midnight. I do want to double check the Cascadia tremor events. Do I still have a viewership? I do. Okay, I got 93 viewers. I appreciate you guys. Wanted to make sure I didn't detour anyone away with those facts out there, okay? Look it up yourself. That's a lot of 4.3 earthquakes that would need to happen to relieve a strain of the 7.0 earthquake that's capable and very imminent out there across the East Bay area. All right, Cascadia tremor, and this is just one little image out here of the strain that's building across the entirety of the West Coast, okay? If you think about it, we could put a big X out here across the Cascadia because it is overdue for a big earthquake. We're not talking about a 7.0. Oh, man, this thing does not produce 7.0s. This produces 8.5 and above. Partial ruptures down here could be across 8.2, 8.3. But there's no way this thing's going to produce a minimal 7.0. This is going to be a big event across this area of the Cascadia. If you were to ask me which area I'm really not concerned about right now, that's the San Andreas Fault northern section. Because geology, right? About the study of time. It's all about pressure and time here when it comes to plate tectonics. 1906 may seem like a long time ago for you and me, but geologically speaking, that's nothing. So I'm really not concerned here with the stress buildup since 1906 along the northern segment of the San Andreas Fault. The Parkfield section, overdue. Southern segment, overdue. Hayward Fault, overdue. There's a couple other faults there along the delta that are overdue as well. Remember about time, folks. Don't let that slip your mind, okay? We can't say that the Hayward Fault had a 7.0 back in 1980 and that we're in the clear, because that's not what happened. 1868, right? Let's look at this. Well, 150 years, right? That was back in 2000. That's a long time ago. It's been 157 years since then. So 7 years ago, 2018. That's when they put this article out, okay? There's a lot of numbers. It's been a crazy Monday for me, so I apologize for not being completely on cue. All right, this is unscripted. But 1868 there is when the last 6.8 struck, okay? We can't claim that it happened back in 1920 or 1980. This is the only segment here that I'm really not concerned about. Other areas, very concerned, mainly the Hayward Fault, because of the amount of time that has passed. All right, let's move on, folks. I look at this every day, all day, every year. I've been doing this for a lot of years here. When I see the amount of increasing earthquake activity here across the West Coast, inland mountain regions, swarms across various areas of Nevada, interesting areas there across the spreading seafloor center of the Gorda Plate. That's the Gorda Plate and the Pacific Plate here. This is the portion of the Blanco fracture zone, which is here. There's been a lot of stress down here across the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, and even some interesting earthquakes there across the fold and thrust belt, where everything's folding in on itself because of the strain out here along the Cascadia subduction zone. But when I see elevated swarms out here across the Intermountain West area, Nevada, all throughout Utah, that strain out here is building, man. It's there. And when it's there, we need to expect some big earthquake activity. It's been way more amplified here than normal. The bad thing is here that there's many faults well overdue. I'm worried about the Hayward fault, but I'm also worried about the San Andreas fault down south here. There's a number of faults out here underneath Los Angeles that are well overdue. So the entirety out here along the West Coast should be on guard. I'm not even joking right now. This is something very serious. Up there around Mount St. Helens, a number of earthquakes there, including a little point 2. Excuse me. From earlier this evening. So I do want to double check that, as I'm very inclined to check the data out here, the official data. Because Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier has definitely seen a little bit of earthquake activity. So this little point 2, negative point 2, occurred at 1830. 1830 would roughly be, oh man, that's 1900. So 1830 is going to be not that one, because that's 1900. Right here? That little blue mark? Maybe this little blue mark? What about all these other bigger events? Hello? How is that an earthquake when there's much more? Maybe this was the 1831. But what about these other sizable events out there? See all those earthquakes? Hello, this is crazy, man. I've been watching the Mount St. Helens and the Mount Rainier earthquake activity here over the last month, since Rainier has been swarming, and they have seen elevated earthquake activity. You cannot convince me that this is ice quakes or wind or rockfall, okay? Because Mount St. Helens does not have a lot of glacier or snow activity on it right now. Look at all those earthquakes out there from the previous day. I'm telling you, there's definitely been a big uptick here in earthquake activity across Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and actually Mount Hood as well. Here's Mount Rainier real quick. Let me show you guys here. You know, these guys throwing out the idea that this is ice quakes. Hello, come on. Slap me silly. That's like saying my AC is just not working great because it's less humid outside. You know, I'm just trying to think of something. This is Mount Rainier. What do you guys see out there? Hello. What do you guys see? You think of this as earthquakes or ice quakes? Really? Is this the wind blowing? Is this rockfall? I don't think so. I mean, compare this, folks. Okay, look at this image from today. This is early morning and afternoon. Okay, look at this image. I do want to show you guys something from July. You guys have seen this image, but back in July when the swarm started, this is what it looked like. They were talking hundreds of earthquakes. So what is the difference between then and what we see now? I think the frequency, right? The amount of multitude of quakes out there is different. This is way more back in July, but they were claiming, and we seen it, because obviously you can't hide something like this, that there was hundreds of earthquakes occurring across Mount Rainier each day. So you cannot tell me that these are earthquakes, and then all of a sudden what we're seeing here in the last 24 hours is simply just the wind, rockfall, maybe some ice quakes out there. Dude, I don't believe that for a second. I really don't. And that's what irritates me, is because I'm all about telling the truth. I'm all about finding the facts out here. I don't fearmonger, okay? That's one thing I do not do on this channel. Okay, if I were to fearmonger, I would claim that this little earthquake right here is a 6.0 earthquake there in Mount Rainier. Look at that, guys. Look at that 6.0 earthquake. Come on. I mean, compare everything out here. This is all about common sense and comparison of the data. The data does not lie here. These are very small earthquakes, but they are still earthquakes. And there is nothing being reported out here across Mount Rainier in terms of all magnitudes. And in fact, the last 7 days here, they're claiming that there's only been 4 earthquakes out here. And I can guarantee you the data claims otherwise. Okay, so take that data and just think about that. This is all information that's available to the public. In fact, us taxpayers pay for all of this data. We pay for all these seismograph stations. In fact, this website that we pay for the USGS, that's ours. This is my website up here from the USGS. Let's check out Mount Hood real quick, okay? Because us as taxpayers have the right to know what's going on. Here's Mount Hood. Palmer Lift, not the best site to check most of the time, but it does look like, this is eerily similar to Mount St. Helens. There's bumps showing up here that is reminiscent of earthquake activity. Now, the amplitudes here are much smaller because there was a couple larger events out here. But when you slow down the amplitudes here, these other events that are showing up are probably earthquakes. Let's check out a little a different station out here, over here along the western side here. This is Yoakum Ridge. Let's see what's going on up there around Yoakum Ridge. Wow, that's a little overblown here. And it's hard to, when the data is inconsistent here, it's hard to keep track of what is legit in terms of earthquake activity. Here's something north here around Barrett Spur. Let's see what we got. That one's a little overblown here. There's a couple earthquakes here. See that? That's picking up earthquake activity. Those are earthquakes. But nothing. So it's all about comparison here and the data. Observation here tells me that there's been an increase in earthquake activity across the Cascade volcanoes here in the last month and a half. And it seems like that's increased there since the 8.8 earthquake across the Kamchatka area. I do believe that we're seeing increased pressurization there across the Cascades, which would make sense. I'm not seeing any forms of inflation going on, in terms of volcano inflation, magma coming up, but there's definitely been some earthquake activity out there. There's one earthquake up there around Mount Hood early this morning. That's a great earthquake to compare the data to. So let's go check it out, right? 3 in the morning, a 0.7. Not a big earthquake whatsoever, but I guarantee you that should show up on the seismograph stations here around the Mount Hood. Well, didn't we just check that? Hold on a second here. That's at 3 in the morning. Let's go back here. I tell you what, the Mondays are creeping in once again. It's interesting here because I don't see that showing up. Right? This is Timberline, Oregon, Mount Hood. 3 in the morning. Oh, there we go. So that did show up here. 3 in the morning here. Government camp. 5 miles northeast of the government camp here. So that is the earthquake. But there's one more previous. It looks like maybe there's 1 or 2 more afterwards. But, man. If I had it my way, I would be showing every earthquake that struck out here, because I do feel it's important to watch these elevated areas. Southern California, there's been really nothing above 2.5. This is all very small microquake activity. Nothing big going on here in terms of swarming. Most of the movement up north. We do have to watch various areas, folks. I'm not even joking. The Hayward Fault's very well primed. Really nothing going on around Yellowstone, but I do want to double check that here real quick. We'll check this Yellowstone station right here. One earthquake, it looks like around 7 or so. A couple other smaller events, but I really don't see anything stirring up there across Yellowstone National Park in terms of elevated earthquake activity. That is not showing anything in terms of interest out there. It's just a couple of smaller earthquakes out there across various areas of the Cascade or the Sawtooth Mountain region up into northeastern Idaho. But this is all general strain out here from the west coast. One earthquake out there in Kansas, Gibson, Kansas. A couple earthquakes around the oil fields in Texas. Look at the New Madrid seismic zone there. A couple earthquakes this morning. We do have to watch this area as well, folks. When the North American plate moves, well, it moves. But a lot of people forget. Don't let, history, right? When it comes to geology, you cannot let time fog your mind, so to speak, here, because when it comes to time, plate tectonics is all about it. 1811, 1812, seen a series of large earthquakes out here. Yes, they did. In fact, it caused the Mississippi River to go backwards. Something like that in terms of upper 7 and low 8 magnitude range would create complete devastation out there. Memphis, New Madrid seismic zone. There's a reason, folks. There is a specific reason why the USGS has this on their hazard map. Okay? Over 200 years have passed since that event. I know we're just human, right? Oh, it's not going to happen because this is my life and I'm living my best life. Well, here we are, folks, in our future. We're in the future. Really think about it. 2025. Who would have thought? Quite a few earthquakes here along the Middle American Trench, including this 5.4 up here off the coast of Mexico. Things have been increasing north, from south to north up here. That's why we're seeing elevated activity here across the west coast. When things move, they move. Okay? This is a general plate stress movement out here. Okay? We are just a couple ants out here, maybe a couple millions of ants out here along an area of land that you really can't see from space. But plate tectonics here tells us that these are huge chunks of land that move around regardless on what we do out here. Our daily lives mean nothing in plate tectonic terms out here. So, whether you got a meeting tomorrow or a birthday party, that doesn't mean squat. You have to be prepared. You have to adjust to what Mother Nature is planning out here. I tell you what, man, it's very visible here in my visualization. I see the elevated activity here across the Eastern Pacific, Middle American Trench northward. It's moving, and areas of concern are starting to show strain. That includes the Hayward Fault. You got to be on guard. That's obvious out here across this area. All right, let's see here. I know all the information here, at least the news media, has been covering the Kamchatka area. That's still swarming. Yes, it is, with 5s and 4s. In fact, man, look how many Look how many 5s we've seen just today. Look at all those 5s. 3, 4, 5. There's been 5 5-pointers, including a 5.6 here. Hello, that is crazy amount of aftershock activity. Months later from an 8.8. This is still showing some signs here that we are not done yet with earthquake activity. I still think it's a battle here between the West Pacific and the Eastern Pacific. I do think we're seeing those signs here along the West Coast. That means that we could see some larger activity out here. A little bit of activity across the Sumatra area. A couple 4s and maybe looks like there may be a 5 in there as well. clustering going on across the Indonesia area. Nothing new. New Zealand quiet. Let's see what else we got out there. South America, a couple 5s out there, including a 3.7. You know, you got to look for these larger quakes on the globe. This is I absolutely love the Earthquake 3D globe because it shows you guys here where areas of uptick are taking place here. Maybe where areas of swarms are taking place. And it's it covers a lot of activity out here. But this is just the USGS and the EMSC data. If I were to include, you know, literally all of these other datas out here and probably some that's not missing, the globe would be chaotic and probably look 100 times worse than this. Okay, the Earth is always moving out here. The plates are always moving. So I don't keep it like that because what good does this do besides create drama here? And I don't want that. I want what's going on here in the last 24 hours so I can keep tabs on areas of concern. So there we go. Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet, folks. Not a whole lot going on. Let's bring this back down. Let's check out space weather activity. I didn't mean to make this a super long update, folks, but I do feel the importance here of mentioning the Hayward Fault, as it has seen an increasing earthquake activity event today. So, you know, you can't really state that the 2018 earthquake, I think it was a 4.4 that struck there along the Hayward Fault, is any less concerning. Well, you can't claim that today's event is any less concerning than that event back in 2018, because here we are 7 years later from that 4.4, much closer here to a big one. Again, it takes how many earthquakes of a 4.3 nature? Let me look here on my phone again. So my mind is blown right now because, whoo, man, I have to breathe on this one. It takes approximately 40,000 magnitude 4.3 earthquakes to release the same amount of energy as a single magnitude 7.0. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Okay, because that is a cold hard truth there. Please don't tell me that a 4.3 is relieving the strain out here along the Hayward Fault. Get your facts straight. A lot of data offline here. In fact, the UV data is offline here for some reason, even on the solar ham site. So we're left with old data here on the magnetogram image, even on the solar ham site. This is fairly recent in terms of magnetic complexity here on the sun, in terms of the sunspot area. There's a new area back here that Kevin has circled, fairly complex, a lot of popcorn colors there. But looking at my own observation, only areas of concern right now amongst the many of sunspots is probably going to be 4226 here. Look at all those colors indicating positive, negative complexity. That's what you want to look for in terms of major solar flare activity. And also this area back here. But all these other ones, you know, you could have 100 different sunspots out here. They ain't going to mean diddly squat unless they're complex. And I don't see that. No major solar flare activity in the forecast. In fact, there's only a 35% chance there of seeing an M flare, X flare around 1% or less. No major aurora activity there in the forecast for now. All right, quick glance here at what the Tropical Tidbits Forecast Center is calling. I'm looking for hurricane activity out here. This is a lower dynamics in terms of wind structure. So let's take a look here. Let's put this into motion. Obviously, you know, Eastern Pacific out here south of California off the coast of Mexico has been pretty active this hurricane season. The Gulf here, not so much. The Atlantic, not so much here, at least in terms of close proximity. I don't see nothing, folks. I think that's a good positive vibe there for the beachgoers out here that own property out there across the Gulf and the East Coast. So that is good news. Please be on guard, folks. The MyShake early alert system. Okay, I do want. Okay, I want to show you guys this real quick. Okay, MyShake app. Let me show you guys here real quick. Okay, because I want you guys to download this. If you live in California, Oregon, and Washington, please download this. Now I know there's been quite a few comments here on today's activity there in the Bay Area that they did not get the notification there of the earthquake activity in the Bay Area. So we can actually go back here and check that real quick on that 4.3 and see if a MyShake early alert system got put out. It does look like there was a shake alert system put out here. There was a time. Yeah, very very minimal. There's like no time there in Berkeley and Oakland, but there should have been a early alert system there. At least some notification sent out from the MyShake alert system. Okay, it's worked for me numerous times here in Northern California, even at a distance. So most of the time when I have the do not disturb feature on my phone, it will come through. Now, whether it works on the sleep feature, well, that's maybe a different setting there, but I've been woken up here several times from this notification here. Okay, so when you do install this app, make sure you allow your location setting. This is what I heard here.
Earthquake. Drop, cover, hold on, shaking expected. Earthquake. Drop, cover, hold on, shaking expected.
So, I over the last couple months here, when the 7-pointer struck there off Northern California back in December, so it's been a few months, I got alerted to that app, that notification there, and I received a 20-second, literally a 20-second notification from the time that 7-pointer struck here off the coast of the Eureka area to where I'm at here in Chico. 20 seconds. So obviously halfway, you know, it's going to be less as you get closer to the epicenter. But, man, you know, we're living in an age here where when you can get notified of when to expect shaking. That is a big improvement. So for the folks there that did not get a notification, I appreciate the input, and I am going to pass that information along there to the folks that are the developers of that app, because I do want to know why you guys did not get it. But you didn't include if your phone was on silent, if you were on airplane mode. You know, it's all that stuff plays a part on whether you got that notification or not. But man, download the MyShake early alert notification system. It's not, there's no advertisement. You're not getting bombarded with ads. It's free, and it's paid for by you and me. This is publicly funded early alert notification system that I do think can save lives out there. I mean, really think about it. To have a 10-second notification there of a big 7.0 earthquake on the Hayward fault. Say you live in Concord. That could save lives there. 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Use that time wisely, folks, because time is ticking out here along the Hayward fault. It's I don't know how much more obvious that we need to make this, that a big earthquake is coming. This could very well be a sign here. These could very well be foreshocks. I appreciate a couple comments there mentioning that I stated that these are aftershocks. Well, you and me, we utilize that voice to text feature, right? And I utilize my cell phone a lot to post here on social media. And when I utilize that text to talk on my social media on the phone, it sometimes says stuff that I didn't state. It's crazy, but it's been corrected. So I do appreciate the comments there and stuff like that. But these are foreshocks, I think, folks. Watch this. I could be wrong, but I may be right. We don't want to play around with this. Have a good night, folks. We'll see you guys out here in the morning there, Tuesday morning, the 23rd, September 23rd. Have a good night.